Okay, so it's 7 o'clock, so we'll start our meeting. I think I'll put my glasses on. So I'm going to call to order the Wednesday, April 9th, 2025 regular meeting of the Inland Wetlands Commission. We'll start with action on the minutes from the last meeting, which occurred on March 12th, 2025. So those were provided to everyone in their physical packet and in their email that came, I think, late last week.
I move they be accepted.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Fred. Any revisions, amendments, modifications to the minutes as typed up? All in favor? I'm sorry.
I just have one question. On page 1 at the bottom, 5 sentences up or so, what is NDDB?
Natural Diversity Database. So for the bugs and bunnies of the endangered species.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions, revisions, modifications? All in favor?
Aye.
So the minutes from the last meeting are approved.
I want to abstain.
Sorry, I didn't ask.
Thanks.
Vicky abstained. All right, so we'll go to item 3 on the agenda, permit request. We have 29 Canton Road, permit application to remove an existing shed and place a new 12 by 16 prefabricated shed in the backyard within a regulated area.
That's all right. I think you're the
Yeah.
wrong.
Oh, that's last week, last one. I apologize, it's been a long day. It's getting longer by the minute. Public permit requests, 160 Granville Road. Valley Community Church, permit application to install a 75 by 85 playground and associated site work within a regulated area. So this application is being received tonight. Is there somebody who's going to present on this tonight? Sure. Come on up, step to the podium, identify yourself and your address, please.
Alrighty. Good evening. My name is Matthew Deerdorf. I'm the team lead for the project initiative at Valley Brook Community Church. We're at 160 Granville Road. I've also got Peter Gove in the audience. He is on the team as well, and the facilities director at Valley Brook. The church is growing. We decided to build a playground. We started looking for options of where we could build this playground. The second slide that I've got for you guys shows some of the places that we looked originally, the orange squares there. We quickly found out through drainage issues. Perfect, thank you. Through drainage issues, septic issues, space issues, that those locations were not going to be suitable for a playground. So we decided to look in the south side field, or what we call the south side field. The mulch area that we're going to have the playground size in is 75 by 85 feet. The playground itself is going to be just under 65 by 70 feet. It takes up approximately 40%, or the wetlands is 40% of the area, or about 2,500 square feet based on my measurements. We desire to place it in between the parking lot that you can see there from the west to the east, and center it in that 40 feet off from the playground. The paddocks that you see there, there's 3 of them. They're used for storage, so we don't want to get too close to those and allow trucks and other stuff to get to the storage that we have in there. We're not going to do any mulch containment around the area, no plastic, metal, or anything like that. It's going to be mulch straight up to the grass and soil that we have there now. It's a flat area from the parking lot straight to the playground area, and relatively flat all the way to the brook, and the brook is kind of set in. The map that you see here was from the AIS or GIS system. That's where I took all my measurements from. We also have the chart that we gave to the town and mapped out where this playground's going to be. We also are looking to do a buffer zone on the east side of the creek there to allow any of the soil that we actually take out, that we're actually going to mitigate and build a buffer zone with wildflowers and seeds and shrubbery. We're also going to be planting shrubbery around the playground area. The sequence of events slide. The first couple are pretty self-explanatory, getting the permits to go through this. We'll establish the straw wattle to protect the wetlands area while we're doing the excavation, just to make sure there's no improper runoff into the water areas. We'd like to excavate 12 inches of topsoil out of that 75 by 85 foot mulch area to go down. That'll be our mulch that we have to have for a playground for safety purposes. It's got to be 12 inches. The topsoil will be removed and sent to our compost pile elsewhere on the property, way far outside of wetlands areas. After that, we'll be needing to drill 59 foot holes. That'll go an additional 18 feet, so a total of 30 feet deep. And eventually those footings will be filled with concrete as we build this playground. We'd like to build a 4-foot fence around that area as well, and that will also have concrete and holes needed to be drilled for that. We'll be using a landscape fabric across that 75 by 85 foot area, and then, like I said earlier, planting landscape shrubbery around the area. The next slide is kind of a rendition of what it might look like. We might shift some of the actual playground elements around. One more, or a couple more up, please. But we do intend to add mulch every year, whether it's 1 to 2 inches, just to keep that safety buffer for the playground. So we'll be continuously adding mulch to make sure it's a safe area. The next slide is our budget, if you're interested in our budget. And then the following slide, past the budget, is the playground equipment itself. And the rest of the slides actually has all the footings and stuff like that if you wanted more detail of how many footings, where they're going to be at in place. I don't necessarily want to bore you with those details unless you want me to go further into those.
No, I think we're more interested in the wetlands aspect of it.
Sorry, sir.
We're more interested in the wetlands aspect of it, I would say.
Okay. Are there any questions based on the slide 2 is kind of the best picture I have for the wetlands piece. 2,500 square feet and 40% of this playground area will be on the wetlands.
So just to confirm, the 40% was calculated using the GIS map?
Yes.
So I just want to clarify to the commission, you'll see in your packet that there is a 2015 survey of the site, and that survey includes the wetland boundary. I think that was the 4th one up here. It's a site plan.
Oh,
So keep going, that one right there. And you guys have the full site plan in there, and so I know that the measurements might be a little bit different. When we had gone out to the site, the GIS was used and not the actual wetland delineation. That was from 2015. And if you guys want, I can give you more details.
Which line is the boundary for the wetlands?
See the WF line that goes through the center of that red square?
Yeah.
So it's mowed lawn right now, that whole area. And I need, this has recently come in. I did get out to the site, but I haven't had a chance to really go through like historical photographs and things. I think it's been a mowed lawn for quite a long time. And the water course runs just to the, west of that. So one of the things that we talked about is like, what would you want to do for mitigation out there, assuming that this wetland still persists in this location? And, these guys were very amenable to trying to do some kind of buffer restoration work because it's been mowed for so long. So part of the process was kind of talking about, could this shed be moved further to the east? And you can see that there's those 3 existing sheds, those 3 boxes that are above the red box there. So there does need to be some kind of space to get in there and maneuver and, not have the kids be in the way of what is happening with that shed area. Correct me if I'm wrong
Yep.
on any of this.
Yep, 100%.
So for that reason, keeping the playground in that location was more desirable. So, some of the ideas were maybe a rain garden, some woody vegetation plantings, maybe doing a wildflower mix. So they kind of need to talk about it a little bit more. We just met this afternoon and decide exactly what they want to do in terms of mitigation, because the other option is to have a soil scientist go back out and see if the wetlands still persist in that location. But I think that type of money would be better spent in terms of enhancing the wetland buffer than, having a soil scientist define exactly where that boundary is between the two, because either way, it's maintained lawn. So there would be a wetland impact, but the functions and values that it is giving at this time are very low. So just by the fact of putting in the native plantings and not mowing right up to the edge, and I think the distance was maybe like 10 to 30 feet, maybe even more would be like the width.
Buffer.
Yeah.
There's about 10 feet from the brook of vegetation, and then it's that lawn. And we'd like to go another 20, 30 feet of buffer zone to help mitigate what we're taking or what we're using with the playground. Kind of give back.
So the 10-foot of buffer, what is it now? Just
Moss.
It's,
moss?
yeah.
So it's mowed up to moss to the wetland,
Yeah, it's mowed into the wetland.
into the wetland.
Yeah, so it's mowed like up to the edge of the brook. So,
Pretty close.
yeah, so it's, the grass isn't really growing well there, which indicates that likely the hydrology is there to support a wetland. So by taking that area and kind of revegetating that lower elevation, that will give that interface between the hydrology and the vegetation for the water polishing qualities, and also the parking lot in that location. If you look in that bottom corner where you see the WF, there's the squaring off of the parking lot there. That's where a lot of the parking lot drainage goes. So it doesn't have a lot of opportunity to infiltrate before it reaches the small brook that's there. So I think the question that comes to the commission in terms of having, if the assumption is that this wetland boundary remains correct, and that there is mitigation done with the assumption that this work would be done within the wetland, would a wetland delineation be something that the commission finds is necessary as part of this project, if they just assume that they're working in the wetland, according to this map, which is from 2015?
How confident are you that the wetland delineation is pretty accurate?
I think it's pretty accurate. I think it might be a little bit high at this point. So,
High?
Yeah, meaning like further away, so further to the west. So I think that maybe it would even come closer to the property line going east. So meaning there would be more of that box that would not be overlapping the wetland. So the wetland would only be like a quarter of the box on the bottom. And, even at that, I don't even know if that would be considered a wetland anymore. It's very, the species that I'm looking at right now, everything's really wet. It just rained. So it's more about when you kind of drop down closer to the brook. So I feel very confident that the way this area's been utilized, the improvements that they're looking to make, for me looking at this, if they were able to assume it's a wetland, even though it looks as not to be a wetland anymore, and then put that, $1,000, $1,500 that they would invest in a soil scientist, and then put it into actually improving the landscape, I think that'd be a better way to mitigate and ensure that the wetlands are protected.
So assume they're in the wetlands, spend the money, instead of confirming that they're in the wetlands, which we've already assumed, but using that money to build a better buffer, because it sounds like it's not a good buffer to that brook, which will, have a better scrubbing effect for the migrating water. So, okay.
And they'll be coming back.
Makes sense to me, but
Yeah, and they'll be coming back at the
that's
next
me
meeting.
personally.
Oh, that'd be fine.
But we would need to see the remediation, the mitigation. And it's not shown on the plan at this point.
No.
So,
We're only receiving it tonight,
and
right?
we're receiving this tonight, so we could, have that shown on the plan for the next meeting, so we can,
And the question is always, is there a public hearing?
well, you're in a regulated area. I don't know that there's a lot of public interest, but certainly the public could request one after it's received tonight, within 20 days, but it's up to the commission if anyone wants to make that motion.
Doesn't seem to me that we need a public hearing.
And certainly if there is a neighbor or someone who's upset about it, I find it hard to believe that they would be, because it seems like we're going to improve the buffers
Yeah.
and take a grassed area and
It's
make
not
it.
even close to the property.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so, but the public can always ask for a public hearing,
Yes.
anyone is interested, so. All right, so, and then we'll continue it to the next hearing and ask the applicant to make sure that you work with staff and get that remediation mitigation plan onto your permit application, onto your plan,
Perfect.
so we can see what you want to do.
Sounds good.
Okay, anyone have anything else? We don't need a motion to do that, it's going to come up on the next agenda. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can adults play in this playground?
It's rated for commercial grade.
300 pounds.
I haven't hit that yet. All right, we're still in a public hearing on 188 Day Street, Peak Mountain Development, permit application for a 7-lot, single-family residential subdivision. I see Mr. McNaughton's here. And I do know that we received a lot of materials
Yeah.
as recently as today.
Oh, I'm unaware of what you received today, so,
Well, it came to me today, so I don't know when the town got it.
okay.
The stuff right here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's sitting here when we came.
You have the floor. Just identify yourself for the record, please.
Okay, I'm Kirk McNaughton with Peak Mountain Development regarding the proposed subdivision at 188 Day Street. Since we were here last time, a couple things have occurred. You probably remember at the last meeting, the town staff had asked us to have our soil scientists go out and kind of reevaluate some of the lines. He's done that, kind of remarked the lines. We've gone out and surveyed those new wetland delineation. And based on that, the wetland has gotten a little bit bigger, and we've modified our plans somewhat. Also, as we were, working on modifying the plans, our engineer had multiple, I think, conversations with the town engineer, and they had reached some conclusions as far as how the plan should work. And so we've modified the plans a little bit different. They're a little bit different now than they were last time we were here in order to accommodate the town engineer comments. So on this, so I'll go over these changes with you so you can see what's going on. The green dashed line there is the new wetland line. It's a little bit bigger. The top of the page is to the east. It's a little bit more to the east, especially at the right side of this plan, or the southeast, southwest part of the parcel. And so what that's done is, with the wetland being a little bit bigger, it's pushed the house location on lot number 7 and lot number 6 further away from Day Street. One of the major changes was the town engineer had expressed a concern or a opinion that he was not a favor of rain gardens, not in favor of rain gardens. So in a conversation with myself and also with the engineer, Kevin Clark had suggested that we eliminate the rain gardens in lieu of infiltrator trenches, okay, which he feels would be a better way to control the water. So we've removed the rain gardens, but we've kept that same area available. It just won't be a rain garden. So the area between the green dotted line and the next, well, you can see that kind of looks like a dotted line up there. You see the driveway, and then on the west side of the driveway, those checkered, these here, this kind of like a checkered line. That's the silt fence backed up by hay bales. So the first thing we do once we get going there will be put up that silt fence. We've established, we've presented a document to the town, and we've agreed to create a conservation restricted area on this site. That's something that we had just talked about before, but in the past month, we submitted the proposed document, the language that says what we can and can't do within that conservation restricted area. And that's shown on the plan here too. If you can see up here where it says proposed conservation restriction and the arrows, everything in between the silt fence and Day Street is all part of the conservation restriction area. Within that area, you may remember before we had plantings, over 35 plantings that were going to be around the rain garden. We've kept all those plantings, and we're just going to plant them, well, kind of along the edge of the conservation restriction area, and then randomly throughout that buffer area. So the change that we made was, one of the changes we made, you see this other line here with the checkbox, which is at the left side of the page. It's the north end, and as the driveways continue, it's the east side of the driveway. That designates the infiltrator trench. So the infiltrator trench is on the opposite side of the driveway, not between the wetland and the driveway. It's on the opposite side of the driveway. But the reason for that is that the driveway will be pitched to take all the water to the back of the site. That's the way it is now, the site. Almost all the water runs to the back. The site's very, very flat, so there's not much water that runs. But the water that does run from that driveway, everything is going to go to the east. So the only water that will be entering the wetland is going to be less than there is now. It's going to fall on into this conservation restriction area. Now, the area between the wetland where the green dashed lines are and the silt fence, that's going to be left to go natural. And you know, any water or snow melt or anything from there will flow to the wetland, but otherwise, that's just going to be left to go natural. We've proposed to put some medallions up there along that edge of the conservation restriction on bollard kind of posts. There'll be a medallion that says conservation area, do not enter, you know, or that type of thing. We're still keeping a couple of bluebird houses and bat house, you know, to kind of attract that type of a wildlife there. You know, I think, otherwise, I think that's it. You know, we've moved the house back. You know, before the house on lot number 7 was like 98 feet off of the wetlands. Now it's more like 102 or 103. So we're past that 100-foot area of regulated area. And I think that's pretty much it. I mean, we've kept the same overall concept. We're not touching the wetlands, basically, and we're bringing our driveway Our original plan had 2 driveways. Because the wetland's now bigger, we've combined them into one shared driveway. But the idea is the same. We're going to not really have any impact in the wetland area whatsoever. So I think that that's pretty much it. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And I'll just say this too, that we did receive notice from the town engineer that he had, our engineer had submitted a lot of calculations, drainage calculations, et cetera, last week. And the town engineer got back to us again last week and said that, well, he asked that our engineer provide the data in a different format, basically. So he didn't have time to redo it prior to this meeting, to redo the calculations in the format that was requested by the town engineer. So it's our expectation that this evening, we won't be asking you to make a decision on this application. It will be operating under the assumption that we're going to probably have to come back at the May meeting, and we're going to give you permission to extend that, to do that. So, sorry, now feel free to ask me any questions.
I have a question. That dashed line that goes through the house on lot 7?
Oh, that one, that
Yeah,
line?
I just don't know what that line is.
Yeah, that's a 200-foot regulated area from the watercourse.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Or is that the wellhead protection area?
Well, I guess it depends. If it's the circle you're talking about, if it's the circle, that would be the well and the protected area around the well. But I think she was asked, there's 2 different dash lines going through the,
Yeah,
through the
it
building,
goes right, not the circle one, but the one that goes from the left border.
Yes.
200.
that's the
To the
200-foot regulated area
yeah.
from the watercourse.
Thank you.
So the conservation restriction area, that's going to be an easement?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm assuming town attorney is going to review that easement. And is it going to be an easement in favor of the land trust or anybody else, do we know?
Well, it's written right now. We gave a proposed document. It's in favor of the town of Granby.
Okay.
Abby, the planner, had indicated that typically what you guys do on this is that kind of wait till the end, like after we go through go through the permit process, and after we go through the subdivision process, but prior to when we file the Mylar with the town attorney would review this together with everything else that he would review. So, in terms of finalizing the language, she'd indicated not to really worry about that yet. That would be probably done in the future.
And the town attorney has looked at the easement language, that they've made some comments, there's been some back and forth, so I think it's pretty well solidified. And I didn't see that it was in this packet. And I also just didn't see in the packet, I think there's the revised wetlands report.
Yes.
Renee, do you have that in the file? We'll have to check on that. All right, so we'll check on that, because they're over there. But, so there also is a revised wetland report for you guys to look at. I just was noticing it's not in the packet. So we'll get that in the next packet. Maybe it just came to me and I thought it went to you.
No, we submitted to the town. I submitted to the planning department.
Okay,
That was a couple of weeks ago, I think.
okay, so we'll just make sure, but there is that, so, I don't know if you want me to give you guys while I'm already
I
talking.
just would note that, I'm looking at the, Mr. Clark's comments, engineering comments. So now he has to re-comment on the revisions that were made, so it would make sense to move this thing forward, but you have some comments.
Yeah, definitely. I think just, I went out there, took a look at the wetland delineation. It is acceptable at this point in time. It did get quite a bit bigger. So I'm not sure. I know we had a drought last fall, so, maybe that was part of with the field conditions and things of that nature. I don't know. But that definitely did change things out there. A couple quick comments, I'll just kind of go over, because I haven't had a chance to really dissect through the plans. Everything came in at the end of last week for all projects, really. And one question I just have right out of the gate would be this swale that's between lots 5 and 6, and that swale dumps onto a steep slope. I'll ask Kevin to review that and see what he has any thoughts of that. I don't know if there's any thought of maybe closing that off on the end.
Could you give us the slide one sheet before this one, please?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Yeah. It's probably between the other two lots too, isn't it?
well, it's the
Yeah,
same
it's
thing.
between 6 and 7.
Yeah, all the water right now runs kind of sheet flow going to the east, going to where that slope is. So, I think that for just a controlled drainage on the site, they created these swales to kind of facilitate water moving to the east, still going in the same place that it's been going. Kevin Clark had asked that we pick up the roof leaders in infiltrators, and those infiltrators have overflows on them. And so, again, want to make sure that you didn't end up with like a little pool, a mini pool of water building up around the infiltrator. So wanted to make sure that the water could flow. If the infiltrator did overflow, rather than creating a pool, it would have an exit to go to the west, to the east. So we can look at that. I can't really tell exactly where the outlet of the footing drain is looking at this plan. But you're just concerned that if we drop it on a steep slope, it's going to then accelerate and have a concentrated flow or whatever. So we'll address that.
Yeah. Yeah,
For sure.
that kind of just jumps out, like, I've always been trained, you don't dump the water on the top of the slope, you dump it on the bottom. So if there's going to be any concentrated flows or any larger flow, especially when things are frozen or during the spring thaw time, that sticks out to me. We'll go over the plantings that are within the conservation area. I appreciate you willingly, establishing this conservation easement. I think that's great. And then kind of going over the plantings, because I didn't see a note on there in regards to them being included throughout the entire area. It looked like they were more specified along the edge. So I don't know, I'll just look through and find that note that says that it's going to be more plantings throughout the entire area.
Well, we just kept the same number of shrubs, and the engineer laid them out in kind of a linear fashion along the driveway. I think in part really to kind of create that visual buffer, physical buffer, to say, hey, here's the conservation area, here's the non-conservation area, and it kind of creates that border. And then there was a few other ones that were kind of planted randomly throughout that, but we had the same number, but we just kind of laid them out a little bit differently. We can put those anywhere you want, really. I mean, so if you have a concern about that.
Well, I think my concern for this is that if we let the area go fallow, if you look at what the species are in that area, there's a lot of invasive species. So multiflora rose will likely go, have a great time over there. So if, I think a density of plantings is necessary to outcompete the invasives, but I also think that there'll be like an invasive species monitoring plan that'll have to go with this, so that going in after so many years and making sure all the invasive species have been established in these areas, because, part of the areas that are getting revegetated now that the wetland delineation's been revised are, those are areas that have been mowed frequently too. So there'd be different vegetation that want to grow in those locations as well. So I think the biggest thing beyond the plantings, because I'm sure the area will recolonize itself eventually, like everything always does, it's making sure it's recolonizing with preferred species and not invasive. So,
Well, I think our plan would be a little bit different than that. I mean, just, give and take, is that we don't want to put a burden on individual lot owners to have to go back and do some, carving out of shrubs or whatever. Our intent is to really just create this conservation restricted area, designate where it is. It's also marked on the plan. Well, not on this sheet, but you can go back to the next the next one. Edge of lawn, we've identified where the edge of lawn's gonna go. We just wanna leave it alone and let nature take its course. We don't wanna put a burden on a future property owner to say, oh, you've gotta go back and do some invasive species study or something like that. So that's our intent, I mean, to create this area, protect the wetlands. We got 45 feet there protecting it, and, you know, whatever trees are there now are there, and, you know, whatever, we're gonna plant wetland species, but whatever takes off will take off, you know, that's our plan. We don't really wanna have a burdensome thing on the future property owner. We want them just to stay out of that area.
Do you have any comment to that?
Yeah, I think the prevailing inclination from this committee has always been from this commission has always been to get those invasive species out and keep them out. And most of the conservation areas that we've been involved with have had a plan, an invasive species plan, or at least the goal of keeping them out of the wetlands. And you're right. It's a lot of work. I've walked my own property with our wetlands official, and she's given me a lot of ideas that are going to tie up a lot of my summer to get rid of the Japanese knotweed. It's what we have to do these days. So, I really think the staff comments are well taken, and I think the commission would like to see that. So, I mean, and I think you can talk to your wetlands scientist, and they'll probably come up with a plan. I know I'm doing it for a client now out in Bolton, and that's one of the things they said. They want those invasives away from those wetlands. So we're kind of standing on our head to make it happen. So just, we're not prejudging anything, but I think you'd be well advised to take a hard look at that.
Okay, well, appreciate that.
Any other comments from the commission or from staff? We're still in the public hearing, so the public is more than welcome to weigh in and ask the applicant or the commission or raise any concerns. Come on up to the podium and identify yourself.
Maureen Everly, Silky Road. I just have a question for Mr. McNaughton. You mentioned the driveway. How far did you separate that from the wetlands? And when it comes to wintertime and plowing and putting down treatments, will that have an impact on the wetland?
So you okay here?
No, you gotta go up to mine.
Okay.
You're going to share a mic.
We'll share.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, the easterly edge of the driveway will be 55 feet away from the wetlands. The conservation restriction area is 45 feet away from the wetlands. That leaves us a 10-foot shoulder for both the aesthetics in the summertime and to have a lawn and, have it look, nice and manicured. And in the winter, that will provide us area for a snow shelf, 10 feet, so we can stay away from the conservation restriction area. Any treatment or any oil drippings or gas or anything that's on the driveway will not go towards the wetlands. It will go in the easterly direction because the driveway will be graded to pitch everything that way towards the houses, towards the eastern end of the property.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? Okay, so at this point, I think we're going to have a motion to continue the public hearing. I'm understanding, Mr. McNaughton, that you consent to that because you have to consent to it. I mean, our only other option is to turn it down without prejudice, but I think we'd be more inclined to continue the public hearing, continue forward, keep making progress, and if we continue the public hearing, the public will have the opportunity at the next regular session to respond to any of the modifications you make between now and then, so.
It's a special meeting though next, right?
It is a special meeting, which is
22nd.
May 22nd. So it would be a motion to continue the public hearing to the next special hearing, which is May 22nd. I believe we had to do that because we wouldn't have a quorum.
Right.
Yep. So
I'll make a motion. Oh, second.
Okay, Arel was very quick and
Yeah.
beat Vicky to the punch, so we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Great. We'll see you at the special meeting on May 22nd.
Thank you, sir.
And if
Thank
you can get your comments and modifications in earlier, we'll be in a position to address them.
Agreed. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Dunn, if you
McNaughton.
wouldn't mind leaving with Renee or myself, just a handwritten consent for extension before you leave?
Sure.
If that's okay? Thank you. Do you need paper?
No.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is also a public hearing, 4B, 15 Peck Orchard Road. Mr. Marr, permit application to construct a brook crossing, driveway, and associated improvements within a regulated area. And I see Mr. Hesketh is here to present. Would you identify yourself for the record?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Guy Hesketh. I'm a licensed professional engineer with F.A. Hesketh and Associates. Our corporate offices are in East Granby, Connecticut, and I'm also a resident of the town of Granby. Could you put on sheet GR1? Perfect. If you recall, we were here last month presenting the application. It was, determination was made that the public hearing would be held, which is tonight. With me, Bill Jackson, our soil scientist, is sitting back there. Richard Marr, the owner, and his daughter Heather are also here. If you have any questions for them, they'll be available to answer any of those. The project we're looking at is on 15 Peck Orchard Road. It's a brook crossing. Subsequent to the original application, we did submit a revised plan set dated March 28th, and that's what you'll be seeing this evening in the presentation that you have before you. And on this sheet, GR1, part of your plan set, I took liberty to shade the wetlands in blue here. When we presented last week, it was kind of a little confusing to see where the wetland resources were. So you can see here that Peck Orchard Road runs along, I guess, the eastern edge of the parcel. And this is not the entire parcel. This is just the area close to the work that we're doing. Could you show GR2 really quickly? GR2 shows pretty much the entire parcel. You'll notice that the parcel, it does cut off a little bit at the top because it's quite large. It's sort of an L-shaped parcel. The portion that's along Peck Orchard Road is really the area that is within your regulated area. Can you go back to sheet GR1 for me, please? Thank you. So you'll notice Peck Orchard Road, and then we have a touchdown right about where the orchard is written, a driveway that comes across, crosses the brook and heads up to the left. The touchdown point on the left or the west side is in an area that appears to be sort of an old logging path or something that historically there's been access up the hill. You'll see topographically there's two knolls on either side of that. So that's kind of a little saddle between a knoll. So that's a natural point that we have to come in and provide connection between Peck Orchard Road and what we're calling the logging path. We had Mr. Jackson go out there and identify some wetlands. You'll see Fox Brook is the long, skinny portion that runs through the parcel. It flows in a northerly to southerly direction. Between Fox Brook and Peck Orchard Road on the east, you'll see there's a sort of a little hatchet-looking wetland on the right there. That's a pocket of wetlands. To the left, you'll see a little blurb that comes off of the side. That's another area characteristic is wetland soil. And then up near the top, there's a little paddle section that kind of extends down from the north. So those wetlands do extend a little further to the south and to the north off of our parcel, probably. But again, we only depicted the ones that are on our parcel. You'll notice two lines that I have on either side. Your regulated areas consist of 200 feet from a watercourse. So from the edge of Fox Brook, we have a line that's sort of the darker blue line or the brighter blue line. That's a 200-foot regulated area, and then your regulations require you regulate within 100 feet of an inland wetland. That's the other blue line. You can see it's a little bit fainter. So there's two lines there that fall within your regulated area. So the activities that we're proposing are the crossing between Peck Orchard and the logging path. And what that includes is the construction of a paved apron along Peck Orchard Road that's in your regulated area, a gravel driveway, clearing and grubbing associated with that, There's some fill that's going to be required for the driveway. If you come off of Peck Orchard, it drops down quite steeply. We're going to go over the brook. We have to raise the structure, so we have to fill in between Peck Orchard Road and the crossing. And then when we get to the other side on the west of the crossing, we have some fill. So the driveway is constructed, and you'll see the contour lines on either side. That indicates we're proposing some fill material. Now, those activities, there's very little impact to the wetland or watercourse resources themselves. If you notice where we've positioned our work is we're staying outside of all of the wetlands, with the exception of the wetlands that are immediately adjacent to the channel of the brook, and I'll explain that in a little more detail. So we've got about 250 square feet of direct wetlands disturbance. In addition, the driveway that's going to go up to the west, we do have a stormwater collection system, and just to the north of the wetlands blur, you'll see a sort of a hot dog shaped feature there. That's a riprap energy dissipator that we're proposing, again, within your upland review area, to take stormwater that's being piped from collection system in the driveway, providing a long path of dissipation and allow that stormwater to filter through some stone, and then, again, into the upland areas and adjacent to the wetland. That's the flow path where that water goes now. So any water that comes down the saddle flows in that direction. We're maintaining that general flow path. So those are the primary components of the project. What I'd like to have is Mr. Jackson come up for a minute and explain the wetlands, now that you've seen the project, the impacts that are within the upland review area and the impacts of the brook, and then have him discuss his wetlands delineations. And then when he's done with that, I'll explain a few more things and then introduce some other information that was submitted subsequent to the original application. Thank you. Bill?
Good evening. For the record, my name is William Jackson. I'm a registered soil scientist in southern New England, a licensed environmental professional in Connecticut, and a registered sanitarian in Connecticut. My company is called Jackson Environmental, and my office is in Berlin, Connecticut. And I would like to start by just summarizing or reviewing the wetland watercourse resources that were delineated here. And there's an A series that extends from the vicinity on the east side of Fox Brook. The A series extends from the vicinity of the northern property boundary towards the top of the page in a southerly direction along Fox Brook. And those flags are basically right along the channel for Fox Brook. That section of Fox Brook did not contain extensive poorly drained wetlands or wetland soils. It mostly, those flags mostly followed the channel itself. And the channel was deeply incised in the landscape there. The wetlands flags, the 2A series delineates the west side of Fox Brook in the vicinity of the crossing and to the south. And again, those flags were placed along the channel primarily. There were 3 areas of poorly drained soils on the site. The area to the east of Fox Brook and to the west of Peck Orchard Road and to the south of the proposed drive. This is an area, is a drainage way underlain by poorly drained soils on the terrace, on the glacial fluvial terrace that is adjacent to Fox Brook. To the west, south of the proposed access drive, to the west of Fox Brook, there is a lobe of wetlands there. That is an area of poorly drained and very poorly drained soil that was delineated on the glacial fluvial terrace at the toe of the escarpment there, adjacent to Fox Brook. And then finally, in the northwest section, near the northern property line west of Fox Brook, there was an area, a depressional wetland containing poorly drained soils, again, on that glacial fluvial terrace that were delineated. So, in addition, Jackson Environmental was asked to review the alternatives analysis statement that was prepared by F.A. Hesketh and Associates for the brook crossing and driveway construction. And if you read the analysis, it contained 3 alternatives. And I concur with Mr. Hesketh that alternative B is the most prudent, the most feasible and prudent alternative because, and it's shown here on site plan GR1, and this particular alignment, number one, it takes advantage of that historical access through that extends through the notch within the escarpment in the western section of the property. It takes advantage of that corridor, if you will, and it does not directly impact any of the inland wetlands that were delineated. The crossing, Mr. Hesketh has proposed a concrete arch structure, which I also agree is the most feasible and prudent alternative since it preserves the channel of the brook and is elevated above the brook. So regarding that alternatives analysis statement, I concur with the alternative B for the proposed driveway alignment and also the proposed crossing type, the concrete arch structure. Mr. Hesketh also asked if I would review the March 28th, 2025 revisions to the crossing plan, to the site plan, and particularly with respect to the erosion and sedimentation control measures that are proposed. And I find that they conform with the 2024 manual, the Connecticut guidelines for soil erosion and sedimentation control, and that they are protective of the wetlands, of the resources. And therefore, in my professional opinion, I think that the proposal has no direct impact to the inland wetlands that were delineated, and has no detrimental impact, and it is also protective of Fox Brook watercourse. Thank you.
Commissioner, have any questions for Mr. Jackson before he steps away? No? Kate, no? Okay. I should note while we're here, in the record, we have provided public notice. So it was published in the Current on 3/28 and 4/4/25, and that's part of the record at this point. Sorry, Mr. Hesketh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, Guy Hesketh. If we could continue with sheet GR2. So getting back to the plan set, the original plan set we have, this has a couple more sheets added to it and a few changes that were made. GR1 and GR2, I'm sorry, can you go back to GR1 again? The original application we had and there's a couple more features on this plan that were on the previous plan. Subsequent to our meeting with the commission, we did have a field walk with staff where we walked with the town engineer, we walked with Abby and Kate, and we took a look, and there were a number of discussions that we had at this meeting that we've incorporated into this plan set. One of them is, you'll know, a shaded area where the crossing is. The town engineer was concerned that, with plowing activities, the gravel drive, that there might be some materials deposited with those activities into the river. So the applicant has agreed to pave that area so that we would have a little more protection for that. So that's depicted on this plan set. Can you go to sheet GR2? This sheet is essentially the same that we had in the original. The next sheet. This is the erosion control plan. There's been a few changes on this. This incorporates some modifications from the previous plan that include a slight realignment of some of the erosion control features that we have on here that include the sediment silt fence, sediment fence, and the sediment logs that are around the perimeter. We had a discussion, and staff had asked us to consider and show clearly what type of plantings we would have for stabilization on the slopes. So we do show a seed mix, a conservation seed mix, is a New England type seed mix. It's in the lower left-hand corner here. That's a type of mix that you put down. You don't mow it when you're done. You just let it, you kickstart it, let Mother Nature take over. And then we have a number of seedling plantings that we're proposing because we are taking down some forest to be able to construct this, some trees. We're going to replicate that and put some seedlings in and allow that to become reestablished. A number of species on there that include hardwood and kind of shrub-type species that are indigenous to the area. The species are listed there. We pulled these off of the same seedling mix that we had proposed for Station 280, which we worked with staff before, so we assume that those are indigenous-type plants to this area. Same ratio of the number of plants per square foot, so we've replicated those on this erosion control plan. Could you go to the next sheet, EC2? This is a new sheet. It shows a close-up of what we'd be doing initially when we do the construction, and this includes doing the clearing. And before we do the clearing, we're going to put the perimeter controls in, as though we're going to be doing the filling, even though that won't take place in the initial phase. We have some dewatering that we're proposing and a pump settling basin in the event that we need to for construction of the concrete foundations for the arch. That will, this is something I worked with Mr. Jackson on. He recommended this. We are also showing, excuse me, along the river, some controls for flow, and I'll get into some details of that when I show you the next slides. And what we propose for crossing is to have minimal grading immediately along the banks of the brook to allow equipment to cross so that we can do the excavation on the other side. That would include peeling back the bank of the slope where the area would be disturbed, removing any boulders that are in the river or the brook channel to allow an excavator to cross. And then once that work is done, that area would be restored to its original condition. And then we would have some flow controls in there while that's going done. We anticipate that the concrete for the foundations will be from a pumper truck that will be brought in on the east side, and then with the boom, that'll be that equipment will not be involved in the construction or a direct crossing from that can be handled aerially. And then, can you go to the next slide?
Excuse me, what are those squares, the two squares?
That's a pump settling basin.
Okay.
Essentially what those are typically they're built with the hay bale structures with the, to allow if you're pumping from the water, you can allow that in there. And those are detail I can show you on another sheet, what that looks like. But that's what that is, a pump settling basin. That's right from the DEP manual. The sedimentation erosion control manual. I can show you that when we get to the detail. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, and this is the plan and profile. What this depicts is the existing elevation that you see on the shade of the dashed line, which is below, and then the dark line on top is the finished grade of the driveway and the structure. So that tells you what the magnitude of what's being filled. Because it's a steep drive coming down and we have to get elevation to cross the brook, we're going to grade that to just nominally about 4% from the road. We want to have a pretty decent slope, but not too steep a slope so it's easily traversed. And then now when you look at a vertical profile, you have to remember that's exaggerated 1 in 10 in order of magnitude in the vertical perspective. So the drive is really not that steep, and what you see vertically is not as steep as it looks on this plan, because for every 1 foot you go in this direction, you're going to go 1/10 of a foot in the the upper direction. So the scale's off by a factor of 10. But this depicts the arch that you see here with the foundation span. And then we did add the annual mean high water level on that based on the delineations that were done by our soil scientists. They both agreed that it was probably halfway between what the state delineation and the federal delineation is. By the way, I did submit for the record the federal delineated wetlands report from George Logan, and I'll get into that in a minute. Your purview is for the state regulated wetlands. The federal regulated wetlands have a slightly different criteria. They're very close to each other, but in the stream crossing itself, we needed to delineate federal wetlands for applications we have with other state and federal agencies. And I'll explain that in a moment. So this plan is nominally the same that you had in the original submittal. Can you go to the next sheet? This is sedimentation and erosion control devices and other details that we have. Initially, we had looked at a poly material for the turf reinforcement mat. We've now substituted that with one that's made of a natural fiber. I think Katie would agree that's more friendly towards the little critters that may be in that area. So we are now showing that. And that's only used in the areas where we have steep embankments up the drive that will actually have an issue. The erosion control blanket on the lower right is the typical erosion control blanket. Again, that's a natural fiber material also. That's used on the 3-to-1 slopes that are coming in from the drives itself. We do show the sediment log section there. Town engineer requested that we bump that to 12-inch diameter, which we did. We show a slightly larger diameter than the 9-inch that was on the previous set of plans. We were showing the silt fence erosion control, construction exit, and then a typical reinforced section for the block wall, which is part of the wing walls that are used on either the upstream and downstream side of the crossing. And then again, the driveway apron. Could you go to the next sheet, please? Unfortunately, this doesn't come out dark on the PDF view. I think on your plans it may show better. But these are the sections for the arch culvert, the concrete arch culvert. And essentially what that consists of, if you look at the top picture in the upper left, there's a foundation, a concrete foundation that's placed. And then these are prefabricated concrete structures that come in on a crane. They lift them up and they drop them onto the foundation. I'm trying to think if we did this probably 15 years ago, something very similar at Hunt Glen. If you go to Stop and Shop, and instead of when you get past the veterinary clinic, if you turn right immediately, Stop and Shop, if you go straight to Hunt Glen, you're actually crossing an arch span that's there. Now, that doesn't have a lot of flow in that river, but we do have an arch span there. We were jokingly calling it the Moose Crossing when we put it in 15 years or so ago, because it's quite large and some pretty good-sized animals can go underneath it. So that's kind of the thing that we're doing with this proposal, is using a span arch. Richard and I were just talking a minute ago. The span arch is 30 feet wide. It's 12 feet high. So just to kind of give you a scope of that, this room, from this wall to that wall, it may even be a little bit less than 30 feet. And the height to the peak above the vent there is about 12 feet. So seems like it's quite a large structure, but when we're at the embankments of our stream, it's pretty steep down to the water. We're going to have this foundation essentially at the level of the stream. So we're going to have about the first 6 feet or so is just going to be matching almost the tops of the banks, and then there'll be a little elevation rise above that. So it's quite large from a hydraulic perspective. The reason we need to do that is because the Army Corps of Engineers and the State Department of Energy and Environmental Protection require that we pass the 100-year storm through here and have a minimum of 1 foot of freeboard. In other words, any part of our crossing, the water can't rise to within a foot of where our crossing is. So this hydraulically meets that requirement. But in the scope, and that's kind of what we're showing here. So it sounds big, but if you want to take a look at the one over at Hunt Glen and drive by there and look at that, when you're driving it, you really don't notice that, but that's kind of what you're looking at. Can you go to the next slide, please? So what we added from the previous plan set is the plan that said there was the portable cofferdam details. This is an inflatable barrier that you can put up, and when we do the work in the stream, we put this along each stream channel to allow the water to pass so it's not in the area that we're excavating. It's a level of protection. This is a common technology that's used. Just a big rubber bag. You fill it with water and stake the ends down, and they're pretty effective. So we have that as a best management practice. Of course, the work that we're doing will be done during low flow season. Typically, that's going to be in July and August, when the rains pretty much stop and before hurricane season happens. That's typically, you get really low flow in the brooks, and that's when you want to do the work. You were asking about the pump settling basin, dewatering pump settling basin, and there's a detail on the second one down on the upper right there. It's just a square structure you build out of the hay bale, stake them in, and then you pump the water into that and let it filter around the edge of it. Dewatering pump intake protection, that's where our foundations are. You over excavate, put stone in, and that allows you to pull water out of that area without having turbidity enter the stream. Town engineer asked us to add a stone check dam to our riprap energy dissipator, so we've included a detail of that in there and show that on the plan view. And again, this just shows a pavement section for the driveway that we're proposing, 3 inches of asphalt, 8 inches of processed stone, the gravel drive section we're showing on here, and a detail of the yard drains. Can you go to the next slide also? And the note sheets, we did add a section or a schedule of operation and maintenance for the storm drain, stormwater drainage systems. The town engineer asked us to modify that and take a look at that. So we do have that provided on here. This sheet contains the project description, sedimentation erosion, sediment erosion control narratives that are required by Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and just general sequence and general notes for the project on there. So, between this sheet, the details, and our erosion control plans, this does meet the 2024 guidelines for state of Connecticut soil, sediment and soil erosion control. Can you go to the next sheet, please? And these are just the surveys that were included as part of the record. The topographic survey of the parcel, which has Mr. Jackson's delineations on it, and the next sheet on the other sheet. The next one, please. Next slide. And that's just a boundary survey. The parcel, and that also does include Mr. Jackson's wetlands flagging on there. So those meet your requirements of your application for both planning and zoning and for wetlands. There was a couple other things. Subsequent to our original application, just for the record, we did submit the revised plan set, which was 328. We also minor revisions to our hydrologic and hydraulics analysis report that were submitted as part of the record, dated 3/28/25. Mr. Logan's federal wetlands delineation report we submitted. We submitted an alternative analysis, and I'll go over that in a moment, and a memo on the state and federal approval process. There were some questions about that. So let me tackle that one first. There's some question as to the other approvals that are required. In addition to impacts that are in your upland review area and require approval by the Granby Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission, we need to go to 2 other agencies for approval of this crossing. One of them is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, their New England district, they have issued a number of what they call general permits for activities that take place within waters of the United States, including navigable waters in the state of Connecticut. So Fox Brook is considered a navigable waterway. What a general permit is, there's 2 types of permits that are typically issued by agencies like this. There's an individual permit, which is scrutinized, and a permit is granted for that particular activity and that particular activity only. And then they've issued a number of general permits where if you meet guidelines for qualifying for that permit, you're covered, what they say, you're covered under that general permit. And one of those is general permit number 19, specifically 19A, inland, which covers brook crossings, stream crossings for non-tidal waterways, and that's what we have here. So we're requesting a brook crossing under General Permit 19A. The way that works is you make an application to the Army Corps of Engineers. It includes forms, the plans that you see that we've submitted to you, hydraulic analysis, the hydraulic report that we submitted to you. It includes the federal wetlands delineation. We submit that information. And then the Army Corps will review that, and they will determine if we meet the self-verification. And I did include in the information that I gave you, there's a whole bunch of things that the Army Corps looks at for determining whether you can verify self-verification. I'll just go over those really quick. Those include, let's see. This is on the third and fourth page. So to be eligible for self-verification, you have to have an impact less than 5,000 square feet of wetlands. We're significantly less than that, at 250 for state, and we're about half of that for federal. All drainage culverts have to be designed to pass the appropriate flood frequency. For a watershed that's between 1 and 2 square miles, which is what we have, our watershed's 1.85 square miles, we need to be able to pass the 100-year flood with 1 foot of freeboard. So our calculations demonstrate that we meet that requirement. We also have it has to minimize disturbance to the watercourses, which ours does. It has to be protective of fish and wildlife. Typically, they want what they call an openness ratio. In the old days, they used to take like a concrete box culvert or round pipes and put them in and then fill over the top of them. They frown upon that. What they'd like you to do is try to leave the natural channel bottom the way that it is, which is what our design does. And the openness ratio is quite large, as I mentioned, 12-foot high, 30-foot span. So we meet those requirements. And then they require that the work be done in the stream has to be done between July 1st and September 30th. So what they do is they look at it, they review it, and then the Army Corps makes a determination through self-verification. And they will give us that determination and say we qualify for that. That application process is pending, and we had to, just like your commission publishes in the newspaper public notification, we're required to do that in the Hartford Courant, so we make a public notification so that anybody who wants to comment on the application before the Army Corps has the right to do so. So interestingly enough, the Army Corps is intertwined with the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. So when you go for a general permit for the Army Corps, you also have to apply for the Connecticut DEP. The Connecticut DEP process requires us to make an application to the Bureau of Water Protection and Land Use. And there's 2 permits that we have to check on the box. One of them is for what they call for is a water diversion permit. So anytime you put an obstruction or do any kind of filling in a water course, it's considered a diversion, even if you're not taking that water. Well, there's two types of diversion permits the DEP has. One of them is a consumptive diversion. So if I were to put a pumping system in and take that water and irrigate a field or something, that's a whole different level. That's what they call a consumptive permit. So consumptive diversions, that's if I withdraw groundwater or surface water use for public water supply, irrigation, power generation, industrial processing, I've got to go through that level. A non-consumptive diversion is for any physical altercation to surface water. So we fall under that category of a non-consumptive water diversion permit. Tied to that is the Army Corps is a 401 water quality certification. So what that is they look at the same thing that the Army Corps of Engineers looks at, but they take it a little bit further. They look at potential impacts to fisheries. They look at the hydrology of it. They want to make sure that you can pass a 100-year storm. But then they take it another level. They say if you have to pass a 100-year storm, but you cannot allow water to back up on any adjacent property. So Mrs. Varco's property that's to the north of us, we cannot put a structure that would cause water to back up on her parcel. So we've submitted calculations to demonstrate for the 100-year storm, we don't have that. In addition to that, they look at, there's probably, I think there's like 11 or 12 appendices that we have to submit. That includes analysis of what are the impacts, square footage to the federal wetlands, what are the impacts to the state wetlands, what methodologies are we using for this. There's a whole laundry list of things that we've got. So that application process, same thing, we submit a notification to the DEP, we publish it in the Hartford Courant so that it goes out to public notice. The public has a chance to review and comment on that. And then if they're satisfied with this application, they'll certify, so they issue us a certificate. So we get the Army Corps approval and we get the certification from the state of Connecticut DEP. So those are parallel tracks to your commission. And we would not be able to construct these improvements until we get certified by the state under 401 and their general permit acknowledgement that we self-verify from the Army Corps of Engineers. So now, if for some reason they want us to make a modification, then what we would do, what we'd be requesting from this commission is that you take positive action on our application. If there's any required changes because of something they want, we would have to come back to this commission before we would be able to make those modifications. So we do need an approval to keep this moving forward with these other agencies. And you had asked, I think, Mr. Chairman, is it best to go to those other agencies first? But not really, because if we were to do that and then we came to you and you wanted to change, then we would have to go through the process. So that's typically the way that it's approached.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy you did the explanation in what you presented. It came over yesterday and I got it today, so I looked at it. And I actually reached out to the town's attorney when I reviewed your work product, because the other part of the question was, and there's a couple of concerns I have. The other part of the question was, is this commission able to issue a permit that's contingent, legally, that's contingent on other permits issuing? Because somewhere in my, addled brain, I just remember running into this issue in other situations. So I called Attorney Roberts to see whether he could address that. He did not. But the other aspect of what we discussed last time was, the Army Corps, they're paid professionals, and you've got the DEP, and they're going to analyze, several levels, including the same flow issue, make sure it's a 100-year flood doesn't get within a foot of the overpass. Great. They'll also analyze the effect on fisheries and hydrology. But again, those are paid professionals. What concerns me is when someone comes before the commission and we don't have the benefit of that. We're not paid professionals except for our very competent staff. But we're volunteers. So if it comes back with a modification, even a minor modification, we're taking more of our time and more perhaps public hearings to address those. So I just think it's in all due respect, and I've seen your work, you're extremely competent professional, and I know you personally, but to me, it seems that applicants coming here, it would be better for us as volunteers if we had those pieces of the puzzle before it came before us, because it would be really informative to us. Because one of the other things I thought about tonight is you had a meeting on site with staff, with the engineer. You made modifications based on the input from Mr. Clark, but I don't see Mr. Clark's comments here tonight. And a lot of this stuff came to the commission at the very last minute. So I don't even know whether Mr. Clark is in agreement with the modifications that you made.
No, I think, from what I'm hearing, I think that we obviously want to leave this hearing open, and
Yes.
which would require an extension, which
Yes.
I'm certainly glad to do, because I think this is a project that's probably something like you haven't seen ever before. Everybody's got to obviously have to be comfortable with that. And I'd like to get whatever questions you may have, and if those are legal issues, we can have Mr. Mark can have a land use attorney contact the town attorney and discuss that, so that, I'm certainly not an expert in that, land use, when it comes to the legal aspect. But we can get
Roberts
somebody.
may say, you're wrong, Ladati, that was the law 10 years ago when you last ran into it. I just wanted that answer. So that may be
Yeah.
an exercise we don't need to take.
Yeah, and again, I think if it's something that you want to have an opinion from the town attorney on, obviously, that you have, and I'm sure Mr. Clark, if he would like to have, review and have a look at that, then obviously we take no issue with that. I've worked with Kevin for years. I think that would be reasonable, certainly. And I think the goal is to try to present this information, and I know some of this stuff just came in, and I recognize that, not to have, you have to, be forced to make any decision, but you can look at this information that was presented. If you have any other information that you need, we'd like to get that within the next couple of weeks, get an answer to you so we can get those issues resolved. So, having said that, can I take a few moments to just go over the alternatives analysis? I know when we first met, unless you want to wait because you have enough information that with what I presented, you might be able to look at.
Man, I read your alternatives this afternoon, and I read Mr. Jackson's analysis, and we just heard it. Essentially, we landed in the same place, the culvert and the crossing in that spot. So I don't, you can explain it.
No, if you're
want.
comfortable, you're busy. I don't want
I'm
to take
just
too much of
speaking
your time.
personally. I have my commissioners.
I think we went over this last time too.
Yeah, it's a little
I
redundant.
mean,
In
yeah,
general terms, yeah.
and it's pretty, I read it as black and white, but,
If we don't decide tonight, does that throw off your federal application or anything?
I'm sorry?
Does the federal application go through the Army Corps of Engineers with the same, does it matter if we approve tonight or not for that one? Or is
No,
that? Okay.
yeah. If regardless,
Long way.
we could get approval from them, but we need approval from these three agencies in order to move forward with
All
this
right.
project, yeah.
But one isn't dependent
No,
on.
one is not, yeah, it's not. And the other thing is the timeline, we don't know how long it will take.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's the issue. Sometimes with DEP, it could take 4 months, 5 months, 6 months.
Who knows now with the federal government? No, I was just making a comment that
Yeah.
you may not know with the federal government either.
Yeah, so, they're responsive, but they're not lightning fast by any means.
Do you know when you're going to submit the application to DEEP and to the Army Corps?
Army Corps
At the same
application is
time,
in,
right?
the DEP application forms are in, but not all the backup materials. Yeah, so we've had that in the queue now for a couple months.
Okay.
But what we want to do is make sure that we don't have substantial changes with this, because if anything changes with this, I've got to redo my hydrology, my hydraulics all over again. So if we're 90% there with the design, and we're going to submit all this stuff. We're sitting there waiting to submit. Probably tomorrow we'll get the
So you're making my
attachments.
point about the modifications, and, we may have to redo the whole thing again. But that's aside. Anyone have any questions? Because we have I see 2 public comments in the record, one from Ms. Murray and one from Ms. Eberly. So, do you have anything else you want to present before we open
No,
this
just
up to the public?
just any questions you might have, we could answer. If you're satisfied with the presentation, then
my only
Thank you.
question is, was there any, just before you leave, was there any other alternative entry to this property? Because obviously that's the,
Yeah, there
A
was
and
some
C.
of the original stuff.
There is an
Yeah.
A and a
Yeah.
C analysis that was done.
from that location, from Peck Orchard, but there,
Oh.
No, a long time ago, there was another entry. It's on here too.
because you have to, because the property's on Peck Orchard, you have to enter for Peck Orchard? I guess there's no other way to get there? Because there's a state park behind you guys?
Tungs's,
Is that the deal? Okay, I just wanted to ask.
And if, Mr. Chairman, I may, before
Oh, of course.
we lose.
Before we open it up to the public.
Yeah,
that would be
just-
helpful.
So I think, looking at this, I just wanted to make a couple comments. We did go out and do a site visit. I walked all the way up to the house site. Mr. Hesketh and the owners were very gracious to show the entire area. It was actually probably the best site visit I've ever been on. There was donuts, coffee, a table, chairs, a dedicated crossing that we could get across safely.
Wait a minute, you did a site visit at my property, so it was better than that?
Yeah.
I didn't give you anything.
Yeah, it was quite a bit better. I mean, we even had cones marked off so the cars didn't get hit. But, besides the wooing that happened, overall, I just had a couple questions. So one would be, are the plans that we're receiving tonight, or that we've received and have in front of us tonight for the revisions, do those meet the Army Corps and DEEP standards for crossing?
Yes.
Okay. And the one area that I had mentioned to you through email, I believe it was, that, it has concerned me from the very beginning, and it still is concerning. And then when I was looking at the alternatives analysis, that, you're saying that there was some wiggle room, is this slope, the largest slope on the south side from the entrance of Peck Orchard Road, which comes right up against the wetland area. So there's really not a lot of room for error there. It looks like maybe there's a foot between the bottom of your silt fence, erosion controls, and the start of the wetland. And just knowing construction, that doesn't give a lot of room for error if things do happen with intense rainstorms and things of that nature. So I do see that there is double erosion controls at the base of that slope, which I do appreciate. I know you're putting the erosion control blanket on that slope. Two questions I have is that, one would be, if the driveway was to slightly shift where that slope could shift, could we gain 5-10 feet of space between the wetland and the base of the slope so that there is some room for recovery if there is some kind of erosion that happens during construction? It's mostly during construction. Once it's stabilized, I feel very comfortable. So is there potential to do that? And then the second thing is, if a slope of a similar magnitude needs to be kept in terms of your engineering analysis of slope stability and the erosion control blankets that you're specifying on the slope, would it make sense to put like a coir log or some other type of check dams halfway down these slopes, so that if there is some kind of rills forming, that these slopes won't go all the way to the base? I think those are the two things. I'm happy to see that the pavement went in on top so that there isn't any issues there. I like the fact that it's crossing the entire water course, which I think is a great benefit, not having a bottom that you have to replace. It sounds like temporary impacts are going to be very minimal in terms of going across the wetland, but there will be temporary impacts. So maybe just the honorable mention of that. If maybe it's already in here, I just haven't read through that yet.
Yeah, it's in the notes sheet. Yep.
Perfect. Really, it's that fill slope that is the primary concern about how close that is. I've never been on a construction site that's gone perfectly.
Really?
Every now and then, but usually they're quick and short jobs. So yes, and then I think in terms of considering the fact that the Army Corps of Engineers is a self-verification process, essentially, as long as the standards are proven to be met, which that is the case from what we're understanding, there shouldn't be any modifications from the Army Corps standpoint because they're meeting their standards. It's just self-verification. DEEP would probably have the most comments, if anybody, in regards to the application. And then coming back in front of us, like you said, if there are any modifications, construction cannot happen until all plans match, right? So if Army Corps somebody comes back with different plans, then obviously they'll be back with modifications. So I guess there is, you talked about conditioning it for other approvals. I think the condition for other approvals is just automatic because of the fact that if the plans don't match, then, they have to build something, and it's going to have to be the federal or the state primarily will come first, at least in meeting their criteria. So that's it. That's all I got.
Does that raise any questions for commission before we open it up to public comment? All right, anyone from the public want to address this application?
I would like to.
Come on.
Good evening. My name is Sue Murray. I live on Peck Orchard Road in Heartland, above where this project is being designed. I wrote a letter to the commission, and I want to let you know that I appreciate your time on this project. And I just wanted to reiterate 5 of the statements that I made in the letter, and I'm just going to read them right now. Number 1, that the project to comply with regulations of the governing entities included but not limited to IWC, PZ, DEEP, and ACOE. Number 2, project to comply with recommendations including but not limited to Federal Wild and Scenic Rivers, Farmington River Watershed Association, and the like. Number 3, project not to compromise waterways and watersheds and their fauna and flora before, during, or after construction, and use best practices to achieve these ends. Number 4, project vehicles to observe the Granby and Heartland no-through traffic prohibition on Peck Orchard Road by using only Route 189 to enter and exit Peck Orchard Road. Number 5, project team to adhere to regulations and protocol of town and all other entities involved, and town to provide oversight and enforcement. I went on to say that the Fox Brook runs into a designated wild and scenic brook, the east branch of the Salmon Brook, and it's highly significant. There's been question whether this parcel is or is not within the quarter-mile corridor, which makes it gives it a little more oversight by other groups. And other groups have looked at the design of the bridge and the project and have felt that it's a good design for that specific parcel. So all we're asking is that it does comply with everything and it doesn't compromise anything that's there now. I would also like to add just 2 items. Number 1, how many trees are they going to be taking out? Because it is quite densely forested, or was at the time. And I don't know if this is the correct commission, but does this comply with the recommendations of your 10-year plan of conservation and development? This might not be the right commission, but I did want to.
Yeah, you may want to direct that to the next commission.
Okay. Well, thank you again very much for your time.
I do have a question, though. You did send in something about, you point out that the 15 POR parcel location incorrectly pinned on the display map presented to the IWWC at the meeting. The parcel is south of the gravel pit. They're showing it north of it. I didn't understand that comment that you made.
I wasn't at the first meeting, but I did look at the PowerPoint that was provided there, and the first slide had 15 Peck Orchard Road pinned north of where it actually is.
Okay.
And it was incorrect on the GPS map,
Okay.
the aerial.
Now I understand your point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Marlene Epperly again. I don't know whether I'm hearing correctly or not. You're not going to move forward and affirm, that the construction begin. Is that correct?
Not tonight.
Okay, because I'd really like to see the Army Corps of Engineer report and the DEEP one. What concerns me, and I just want to do this for your edification, is that Fox Brook is a perennial tributary of the East Branch of the Salmon Brook in Granby and Heartland. It supports populations of wild brook trout, brown trout, and black-nosed dance. Now, wild brook trout requires a very cold, clean water to survive, and it is listed under the Connecticut Wildlife Action Plan as a species of greatest conservation need, with a draft level of importance of most important. This is a watch list of native species with declining populations and vulnerabilities that are expected to benefit from strategic conservation. So when we think about, the biodiversity, clean water, I really think the commission needs to work with the town to make sure that before, during, and after construction, that efforts are made to really watch the amount of erosion. I'm happy to hear that they've decided to pave, but I also think it's good to wait until you get all your reports in, because we're in sort of an El Nino type weather pattern where we have a lot of rain, and you never know how wetlands may shift, get altered, become overly saturated. I'm concerned with a lot of excavation equipment going in there. I don't know if they're going to put down those black mats that sort of insulate the watershed from the excavation equipment, but I think it's something that should be considered. Those are my comments. I just think that we really need to make sure all the reports are in concert and make a plan for any contingencies that might occur. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public want to be heard? Okay.
If I may?
Yep.
There was a question about the trees being cleared, and I went out there, and the trees are marked to be cleared, and maybe you guys can confirm this, that the trees that are to be cleared are within the silt fence limits, and there are no trees outside of the silt fence that are slated to be cleared. If you confirm that is the case.
Yes, it is.
In your name, for the record?
Richard Marr, the applicant.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay. So, I think the final order of business, well, this comes back up on the agenda later on, but we can deal with that separately, because we have to consider whether we're going to continue the public hearing with the applicant's consent, which I believe Mr. Hesketh indicated.
Yeah, right. Sure.
Okay. So does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to continue this public hearing until the special meeting on May 22nd.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Vicki. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, so we're going to continue it. I think Kate's going to ask the applicant to sign a written consent.
What I'm doing right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate your time.
You're welcome, thank you. All right, so let's move along with the agenda.
10 Goddard Road.
10 Goddard Road. Agent report and correspondence, 5A, 10 Goddard Road. Permit application to locate 2 prefabricated structures and associated site work within a regulated area. Authorized agent approval, 32525. What's going on there, Kate?
So we'd be a lot more busy tonight if we weren't able to do it this way, so, which is a good thing. So over at 10 Goddard Road, he's looking to put 2 sheds in there. Just trying to get to the part of the packet here. And you can see, so as you go up the long driveway, there'd be 2 sheds. One of them was already installed without knowing, so when you came in for the second one, I became more aware.
That was my question, yeah. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
2023, so.
Yeah, so, like I said, they didn't know. And also, they are going to be planting trees along the sides of the roadway, all the way up and down evergreens, quite a few trees. And so that's also something that was included as part of this. Really, it's pretty straightforward. The sheds were going in an area that has no evidence of wetland. There's a berm between the brook and the shed location. And yeah, it was 100 new evergreens. That was the number.
Wow.
Yeah. So quite a lot of new vegetation, because if you remember, they had the waterfall feature back maybe 2 years ago, and they've put in, I think they've had to put in probably another 100 woody vegetative species native up on top there. So the amount of plantings that they have done to offset the work that they have done is pretty impressive. Let's just see if there's anything. The split rail fence is something that they're looking to do when they're first coming in on the driveway. and they're going to be putting up a tent for a fundraising event. So we kind of just included everything in this one permit, even though the shed was the main focus, there would be other things happening on the property. So if you have any,
You need a permit for a tent?
well, it's in the upward review area and it is a structure, so we threw it in there, you know.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
You know, I think more would be a zoning situation in that case, but because they already had it in the wetlands application, I thought it was just include anything they're looking to do.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the commission on that RFR? Okay. That brings us down to 175 Salmon Brook Street. RFR for a prescribed burn on 3 acres of cleared land within a regulated area in association with the Granby Wildflower Meadow Organization.
So essentially, they were having a hard time getting the species that they wanted.
I thought so. Didn't look like
Yeah.
anything was coming up.
I saw a great milkweed patch, but other than that, you know, going by at the speed I do,
Yeah.
you know, it was kind of hard to see anything else. So their goal is to try to do a prescribed burn out there, and then that'll help them get rid of some of the obnoxious species that are not allowing the natives to come in. So it's pretty straightforward. You know, it's no real soil disturbance, anything like that. It just was to make sure that it was considered a non-regulated use.
And I saw that the fire marshal was involved with this determination, so
Yes.
we all
Yep.
feel better about that.
Yes, very much so.
All right.
So, yep, that one's straightforward and just more of a paperwork process.
Okay, so now we're back to 15 Peck Orchard Road. There is an RFR for removal of dead trees and installation of a sedimentation fence within the regulated area.
Yes, so we got a phone call and that there was a machine that had been mobilized on the site and some silt fence was being put up and some trees were being taken down. So we went out there, took a look at everything, and the applicant wasn't aware of what was allowed and not allowed. It was very innocent in terms of what was being done. He had some extra help that was in the family that was around, and so he wanted to take advantage of the extra help. So he took down dead trees, and then in the process of taking down the dead trees and having the machine in there, he figured he'd put up the silt fence, A, because he had the help, and B, because that would protect the brook from any kind of machinery moving around while he was taking these trees down. And obviously none of that was signed off on or allowed. So immediately ceasing all activities, I went out there, made sure everything was stabilized, that there was no exposed soils, that only dead trees were removed, and at that
How'd they get the
time,
machine in now? How'd they
Yeah.
get the machine in?
just from Peck Orchard Road, because they didn't have to cross the brook. They did everything on the Peck Orchard side of the
Okay.
brook,
That was
so no
the
crossing the brook.
Thank you.
When I went down there, the machine was parked within, I think, like 20 feet of the brook. So what I had asked is if they could move it as far away as possible without having it be like, you know, sitting on the side of the road asking for trouble.
Yeah, it's further up the road on the other side.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So they were able to move that away. So if there's any fluid-filled spills or anything like that, it's located away from the brook. And pretty much nothing's going to be happening out there going forward. So while they do spend a lot of time, you know, enjoying the property, you know, they have seating areas and things of that nature. So they're very ambitious to, you know, and excited to get moving on this property, but there'll be no more movement for now that we'll see in terms of earth or trees or machines.
It's not a good idea to start working while your application is pending.
No, and
Just saying.
it definitely was, you know, it was like a misunderstanding completely. Nothing was done maliciously by any means, and it was very apologetic and very unknown, so.
All right. So, things were flying in the office apparently in the past several days. Anything else that we should be aware of?
Yes, 7 Laurel Lane, that application is automatically being received tonight. It was received Monday, I think it was, so you guys don't have that in your packet. You'll see that at the next meeting. That is Jason LaChance, if you guys happen to know him.
He was a member of this commission.
So he is looking to do some septic system renovations on a property, do some brush work. There's some really tall trees that are on that property, so, and the whole property is mapped as wetlands. So everything's right around the house, everything is accessory to an existing structure. The one thing that might happen between now and the next meeting is that these trees, they're very large pine trees, and I guess he's having trouble getting insurance because of their proximity to the house. And also, the timeline for the tree people to come out in relation to power, I can't remember the exact details, was before the May 22nd. So because of the insurance aspect and because of our next meeting and the timeline that they actually has a contractor getting out there, that's something he was looking to maybe move forward on RFR. It would be, a portion of these trees, there's like 5 or 6 of them, they would be in the mapped wetland area, but they're immediately adjacent to the house. So in that case, we would check off the RFR box, also have the trees be separate, and then potentially John could sign off in between because it's in a regulated area.
So the tree removal would be the only part of it by RFR. And why would you need the chairman to sign it as opposed to staff?
Because staff is not allowed to have any sign-offs when something is in a wetland area.
Okay.
It has to be outside of a wetland. Mhm, in the upland review area.
So if my fellow commissioners don't have an issue with it, I'll work with staff on that piece, just that piece.
Okay.
And I'll probably send the vice chairman out for a site visit,
That sounds
because that's our deal.
good. You look very, very, very united tonight, by the way.
good.
In color.
That's because Vicky moved to this side.
Yeah.
Vicky came over to the dark side.
All right, so we'll just proceed that way with Mr. LaChance's application.
Yes, also, thank you guys for waiting. It was a very long meeting. We have
Oh,
some
wow.
wonderful new owners of 201 West Granby Road. If you remember, we have a happy.
We're familiar with that property.
Yes, so I was out there today with these nice folks, and we were taking a look at everything out there. The plantings are all looking like they survived through the winter, which is great. There's still a pile of wood out
I was
there.
going to say wood. What did we do?
Yep,
Wood
and so these
chips.
guys want to utilize that wood and have that wood over the, it's going to take the summer to bring it to the front. They're also going to, they've been looking into talking to a landscaper about putting in a culvert so that where the paddocked area is,
Right.
that it would be, before they do get any livestock in there, that would be able to be an area where the stream is not flowing or
So take the
water's not
pipe
flowing
out?
through. What's that?
Are we taking the pipe out?
The pipe would stay in, it just wouldn't be crushed anymore, and then the pipe would be extended and then daylighted away from where the paddock area would be.
And the wood chips in the wetlands?
Those are degraded, and they're degraded to a point where I don't think going in there and having any kind of disturbance would be of benefit.
Well, as long as you're happy.
And, well, and we did go back, we looked at the other vernal pools, we found some, I think they might be spotted salamander egg masses in there, which was pretty fun for me. And, if you guys want to say anything, or feel free to do so if I've kind of missed anything. I do think that you guys might have some future plans, like getting rid of maybe the back barn, doing some additional tree plantings because they want to have some additional landscaping and things of that nature. Everybody's aware of the call first, start second rule that we have in town.
Got it, okay.
And
Congratulations on buying the property, and I'm sorry.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
so it looks like it's in great shape. These guys know what's going on. They, have some hopes to take some dead wood down in the back area as well. So we looked at those other vernal pools. And again, anything that's going to happen out there, they'll just give a call over to the office or myself, and we can kind of go over it before it happens.
Great.
Thank you.
We hope not see you guys very often.
Don't take it personally.
And the feeling's mutual. All right, great. Anything else?
We have new owners in 310R Salmon Brook
Oh,
Street,
Yeah.
which is right next to the Salmon Brook. And I'm going out there to meet with them next Wednesday, and it's my understanding that Marco, who was the previous owner, was out there this week doing some work to the slope and to the
Patio?
the patio and the retaining wall, putting the drainage behind the
Right.
retaining wall, and getting the leak offs done correctly. So we'll check that out next week, and this new owner sounds very excited to own the property and to try to maintain the brook and maybe have some coordination with Lower Farmington in regards to, preserving the bank of the brook that's located right next to
Yeah.
that property.
There are funds available.
I keep telling everybody.
I know.
We also have a Holcomb Farm Trail. And we also have a Holcomb Farm Trail application that's come in for an RFR to kind of improve that trail when you go across the street from the barn that gets
The
icy.
tree trail.
Yes.
I don't know if it's.
Yeah, it's the tree trail.
We just
It's
worked.
the beginning.
We just worked to
worked
get
on
the sidewalk.
Yeah, the sidewalk.
Yeah, so after the sidewalk, you go right up that trail.
That's the tree
Yeah.
trail.
So they have some improvements they're proposing, so the water bars, making those into more definitive water bars because the water goes over and causes icing conditions. So for that first stretch of it where, everybody can access, some improvements are proposed. So you'll see that as probably signed off at the next meeting. So we're working through the
And happy
last.
belated birthday to our chairman.
Happy birthday.
When was yours?
It was Sunday.
Mine was last Tuesday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
But I bet you're not 70 years old then.
No. Not today.
70's a new 40, come on.
Oh, God.
No, 80 is.
Yeah, go, Fred.
Maybe we should adjourn.
We better adjourn.
It's getting late, guys.
It is. All right. Anything else? Motion to
I
adjourn.
move we adjourn.
Arel?
Second.
Second by Vicky. Vicky's on fire tonight. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.